You can't decide you're going to do leadership. You have to decide you are a leader.
The leader that I became or am becoming and continue to learn is no longer scared to have conversations because I truly believe I'm doing the right thing with the right intention, and so are they.
All right, welcome back to the Apex Perspective. I'm your host, Matt Hale, and with me, as always, is my partner and co host, David Lohmann. Our co founder, Dr. Layla Lohmann, is back with us again. In our last couple of conversations, we've talked about proactive patient care and communication inside the dental practice. In today's episode, we're shifting the focus to leadership itself and the personal growth journey that shapes the way doctors lead their teams and their practices. Layla, it's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me back again. I don't know if you're going to have me back another time, so I'm going to maximize this audience.
Well, basically, at this point, we're just going to make you a co-host. So,
Yes.
uh,
I've
you
gone up
know,
in the world.
growth in dentistry is so often measured externally. People think about production, right? Number one, they think about expansion. They think about additional offices, additional doctors. Sometimes they think about systems if they get that far. But there's there's an element that underlies all of that, I think, and it's really the leadership of the person that's taking ownership for the success of the practice. And that's really what we wanted to talk about on this episode is this idea of ownership, not so much from a legal point of view, but from a responsibility point of view, from a driving point of view, from a growth point of view. I think there's so much there's so much misconception about what it means to be an owner. I think so often it's tied very, very directly to this concept of equity ownership. And a lot of people think that if you're an owner, then you're a driver. And those are two totally different things. And so I know you've got an awesome story to tell about your growth experience and your journey as a leader. So, coming out of school and having what I think is a pretty typical young doctor mindset of I'm an associate, somebody's responsible for the practice. My job is to do the dentistry, to growing as into really a true leadership mindset and an ownership mindset, and recognizing that nobody but the doctor can drive a practice forward. Nobody but the doctor can really drive the success of that doctor. So I'd love to share some of that with our listeners today. Can you start by
Yeah.
maybe sharing your experience coming out of dental school, your first job, and what that was like, and how you experienced that?
Yeah. I mean, you're actually very accurate on what we think when we first come out. I think it's because we don't know and we are not confident as a doctor yet. It's weird to come out of school at 26 and be the person making all the decisions. It's very anxiety, like there's a lot of pressure. And so when I went into the branded corporate model, the employment based model that's still out there today, I thought they were going to basically set me up for success. They were going to give me everything, patience, skills. I was going to be able to build who I was supposed to be with them. And the challenge is I didn't know who I was. So when somebody else was telling me how to do things successfully, I was a really big part of the roadblocks. I also didn't love some of their systems in place at that time, but I didn't know it at that time. So I was excited. I was excited someone was willing to invest in me, and I wanted them to do everything. And then I do the dentistry because I didn't know how to do the dentistry extremely well at that time because no one was checking my preps. No one was checking, is that decay? I couldn't ask like, is this what it's supposed to be? It's very scary. So to your point, I thought a leader was doing the dentistry. So you're right. And then we moved, me and your co-host moved to Chicago for a year. And this was 3 years in. And I saw dentistry could be done differently. There was a group practice model. There was a lot of support. There was so much knowledge out there that when I stopped to become a roadblock to myself to being open to hearing what people are saying instead of resistant to saying, I know better. They taught me this. I know better because this is what was taught. They didn't teach you business. They didn't teach you leadership. They taught you dentistry. Fix a problem, get a patient in, go to the next problem because that's how they teach dentistry in that finite time. And, well, when leaving Chicago, I remember turning to David and I was like, I want to do dentistry, but I want full support on everything that I don't know. And you're the best business person that I know. And I know that you love me enough to make sure that I'm on the right path, but I know the clinical. So, we talked to you. We built this beautiful model in 2014 of what the third option in dentistry is supported dentistry. And first in supported dentistry, I thought you're supposed to do the same thing. I do the dentistry and you do everything else well. And it went well. We've done very well successfully. But I will say what shifted after COVID was I didn't realize I needed to be a good leader in my practice. I thought being the doctor was the good leader, doing the dentistry, helping the patients, and letting you guys do everything else. And then I got frustrated a lot of times with our stuff and systems. And I said, it's always been done this way before, or that person will never change because they've always done this before. And I remember sitting down with you, Matt, one time, and you're like, you need to be holding people accountable. And I was like, well, what's your job? He was like, not that.
Well, it's kind of all of our jobs, right? And I think it's hard to kind of disentangle your journey from our broader journey as a company, even though that's not really what we're talking about today. But I think the big change that we all made post COVID is realizing that you can't disentangle leadership from being the dentist, right? Like the natural leader of the dental practice is the dentist, and you can have all this support, you can have all this business system, you can have office managers, regional managers, HR. You can have all these resources, but at the end of the day, they've got to be resources, not trying to provide the leadership to the practice that you just aren't going to replace. I think if I can summarize in 15 seconds, our 12 years of experience, almost now building this business, I would say it's that. And I have to credit you because I think your journey and you growing as a leader really helped us as an organization grow by seeing, oh, okay, wait a second. If we help Layla become a better leader, then the practice grows, right? And things get easier. And by the way, she's way happier and more engaged in the day to day and excited about the growth of her practice. And that really was, again, not the path we're supposed to be going down today, but that was really the birth of our, Apex OS framework that really enables every doctor to have that kind of experience that you had.
Look, I think it's interesting. Both of you pointed out this timeline inflection point of through COVID, and I think it a little bit digs to the point of which we're talking about. That look, there's this I think common belief that if you are the equity owner, you're automatically the leader. Although we have seen a whole lot of private practice struggle because that leadership element isn't there. If you are the doctor in title, you're the leader. Again, I think a lot of practices struggle because either that mindset or just the interest in being that person, the practice isn't there. But I think what's interesting through COVID is, yes, it was an inflection point for us as a company, but it was really a time that leaders had to step up, or the business coming out of that was going to be challenged, right? And probably anyone listening to this, who lived through that time, can relate, right? It's you all of a sudden, for the first time in many of our lives, had a group of people, whether that was, the individual team of your practice. In our case, as a company, we were 20, 25 practices at that time, in a team member group across 25 practices looking to what's next? What does this mean for me? How do I support my family through this? It was challenging, a lot of unknowns, and I think it forced a lot of us to step into that role. And so I think in many ways it's I was really interested that both of you pointed to that time, but I think it was a time that all of us probably from a development standpoint truly said, look, there are people who depend on us. There are people who look to our direction. And it didn't stop there, right? It informed us, but it has continued in the way that we all think about business or think about leadership. It's informed a lot of the development programs we've put in place of we need really strong leadership at the practice level as well. We need doctors being leaders. We need office managers being leaders. We can talk about that kind of two-prong approach that we have taken, but it is I think it was an informative time, transformative time maybe for us three as leaders and in the evolution of Apex as well.
Well, I I would say that it was super transformative for me. I didn't realize that I should be having these conversations with you guys as a leader. I just assumed you would be telling me when we needed to have these conversations. And I didn't really understand what partnership and leadership should look like until we had that pivotal moment. And then to your point, I was like, well, I need to be doing the same thing with my patients and my practice. It is not a Apex Dental Partners. Um, I would say it wasn't your responsibility to be doing it at my practice level, and I just assumed through what support should look like that it was. And I think I redefined in 2021 what my responsibility was supposed to be to my practice, to my team members, and honestly to myself. And then building that. And then I started having more conversations with you guys. And then I translated that back down to the practice. So I did shift my identity from being the doctor to being a leader in my personal life and professional life. And it's just been transformational, and it's helped our company do that two-prong approach. And I told you guys I can't do it on my own. And then I went through that leadership program, and it helped me develop the skill sets and build that stronger muscle to be the leader I needed to be instead of wishing and hoping it happened. I had to have some type of system or consistency. And then we built that program for Catalyst and Ignite.
I think that's so key, to to making the whole thing work is you can't decide you're going to do leadership. You have to decide you are a leader.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we saw with you is you went through that program and you were transformed, not, you know, between the hours of 8 and 5 when you're in the dental office, right? Because you decided you were gonna lead. You decided I am a leader, and that went throughout your personal life and your professional life as well. You want to talk a little bit about what that experience is like and how you came to that realization and made that decision and what that's meant for you?
Yeah. Oh, we're getting personal, Matt. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
that's
do
right.
this. Um, honestly, it's been like the most rewarding and liberating thing I've ever done in my life, and I didn't think that at 38 I would have this aha moment. I think inward and outward mindset, I always assumed I am so outward. I have such good patience with people, and that's who I truly believed I was because that's who I showed up as. And I realized as a recovering overthinker that I was in my own head half the time when having these conversations with my patients and including you and Matt, or sorry, David. I'm staring at David, by the way. You, David Lohmann. And that was really the first part. Where am I in my head, and am I being clear in my communication? And then I kept going every single month to the program, and I would come back and like, let's change my practice. And I realized that's not working because I got really a lot of pushback, both from you guys and from my practice. Just you guys didn't realize you were pushing me back, but that was my perception of coming back and excited. And I was like, Matt, we need to do this for the company. And you're like, okay. And you didn't really see the transformation till probably a year or two later. I mean, you started noticing it a little bit differently. Maybe you can give me that perspective of it. But then I learned communication, and I understood my communication style, which is what we talked about last time, was adjusting and modifying my style to be more effective, both personally and professionally. And then honestly, I did this communications workshop, and I remember calling David in my hotel room, and I said, I bombed it. I am so good at talking. I'm so good at all these things, and he's very reflective. He's, like, quiet and just listening to me talk, and he's like, "Tell me your speech." And I told him my speech. I messed it up so many times, and he's like, "What are you trying to say?" And it was a humbling moment that, like, my partner's spouse really wants me to be successful. He's always like, "We're Team Lohman," and I'm like, "It doesn't feel like a team right now, David. So let's do this." It was that moment that I flew back and I was like, "How about stop being the person I think people need me to be? Stop being who I need to be seen as a doctor, being as a good mom, and start being who I need to be." And taking all those tools and then build something for our doctors. Like, this is what support looked like for me, was that communication, that awareness, that recognition that I am part of the problem. I am
Mhm.
part of the reason our partnership is not working well or my patients are not accepting the care. And that's when I came up with trying to say, like, how do I do this? And you told me we have no money.
We'll just cut that part out.
I know.
Uh, I think that it's so interesting because I think that realization, for you, we saw that play out, and we saw the change it made in you, which then rippled through your practice, right? As this change happened in you, your practice grew, your case acceptance grew, your enjoyment, I think, of being a leader and being a dentist grew. I mean, there was a time, I think you've always loved being a dentist, but there was a time where you loved it less than I think you do now, based on
100%.
my
You've been my
experience.
patient for years. Both of you have been my patient for years, and it's been night and day difference the last 4 years of
Yes.
me enjoying dentistry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're totally right. I think it took a little bit of time for us to realize, okay, so the change that's happened here is what happened is a change in Layla.
Yeah.
It's not only a change in how Layla practices, it's a change in Layla. And then we realized we can take what we're doing and stop focusing as much on what are we doing in the practice and start focusing on the person and developing the person. And that's when we started to drive real change, I think, and turn what was an early but good CE program into something that I think is the world's best today. Honestly, I'm biased, but I think that's the case, and that's all thanks to this journey that you've been on. You
Yeah.
know,
But
it's
it's also that you guys listened to me. I mean, I know the first 3 months trying to put the program on was probably the most challenging for me, because I was like, "Can't you see that my case acceptance stuff? Can't you see that I'm happier? This is what support looks like to me." And I look back at both of you at different times, and I'm like, this is what we need to be focusing on. And you, as the business side, was like, we don't necessarily see it 100% yet. Like, we see you, but like, how do we scale it? How do we do it thoughtfully with partnerships? And then we figured it out, and I agree, it's probably one of the best things I've ever seen, ever done, and I continue to learn more and more each time that I do leadership. That's leadership and development, that I just continue to, get that, like, dopamine hit to continue to be this version of you, because it's very freeing.
I think one of the things that's important to acknowledge here for somebody listening is that leadership doesn't take a singular form, right? I
mm,
think that movies would suggest that that means being the ultra type A alpha. I'm going to be the loud vocal leader. I think one of the really interesting things is we look across our practice group, our supported doctor base of 115 plus doctors, is that strong leadership comes in a lot of different forms. Yeah, I guess we've got that 115 plus doctors. We've got another 60 plus office managers that are approaching this leadership in very different ways. We've seen it ineffective, but we've seen effective leadership come in a lot of different forms as well. And I think that's important for somebody who's trying to understand, hey, how do I become this person in my own practice, my own business? How do I provide this for my team? That it's less about a particular form or level of intensity. And I think in many cases, more about consistency and confidence, finding who you are, and being consistent about it. So I don't know if, you guys share or maybe not that view, but for me, when I look across it, a lot of effective leadership is about being consistent in our approach, giving our team members expectations, and then being consistent with the accountability around that. Both in what our expectations are, but consistent in our identity too. Who are we as a person? Who are we as
Yeah.
a practice? Um, and I think people rally around that is a far more effective form of leadership than trying to be the loudest voice in the room, perhaps.
I think that's exactly right. I think it comes down to mindset and being true to yourself. And I think that's what you said earlier, Layla, when you said, I stopped trying to be the person that I thought other people needed me to be. And I
Mhm.
started just being the person that I needed to be uh,
Yeah.
or wanted to be. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a difference there, but
Well, it also, I think consistency is scary because you're uncertain of this version of you because everything that feels familiar, it gets comfortable and you're fearful of maybe making the wrong decision. But when you have like partnerships and effective communication, if you fail, it's just a lesson to learn to do better next time instead of my identity failed. And so I've learned to separate the two. But to your point, David, I think it's built credibility. So when my team started seeing me being the leader, I shifted in my practice. They started mirroring it. I mean, I went up and I told them what I learned. I told them how we're going to slow things down and be more thoughtful. We're going to follow the systems and processes and not say it doesn't work for us, but really try it. And I never put a timeline on things. I just kind of wished and hoped. And if it didn't feel like it was working, I switched it. And now I'm like, we're going to try it for 1 month and we're going to decide in that month what we can improve and what was successful, not that it didn't work. And so I had to like change how I viewed it. And it was really challenging because my team had been with me for a year and a half by that time. I would go and learn and I would go back to being comfortable. So it was being consistent and committed to being this version, and it built credibility, so they knew I wasn't gonna waffle anymore. I knew who I was, I'm gonna hold people accountable, and first, I'm gonna hold myself accountable. And that's what I think leadership looks like as it translates through a practice, and then it translated back to our organization, because if I could do it with my practice by being one person with 3 doctors, or I'm one of 3, but and a team of, like, 23, and then we just saw that we kept growing, and I personally kept growing, from my case acceptance and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, this is actually easier than resisting all the other stuff. That's what leadership is, seeing where I'm inefficient, no shame or blame. And then how do I improve? And so I start asking the right questions now.
yeah. Well, and it sounds like the difference between being reactive to, well, this isn't working, and taking ownership or and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the timeline, and then we're going to look for ways to improve it. I think that's a big difference in mindset between reacting to something that's thrown your way, right? And taking ownership for whatever that thing is and deciding that you're going to do it, you're going to do it in this timeline, and you're going to find ways to improve it. I think it's an easy difference to overlook, but it makes all of the difference in the world to whether whatever that thing is successful or not.
Yeah, I agree.
I think one of the keys that I have seen, and I mean it's not revolutionary. I'm certain that there's literature out there on us, but on this, but one of the I think keys to becoming an effective leader is gaining this comfort with the uncomfortable. Look, we constantly find ourselves in this situation of difficult conversations where it's a lot easier to punt or deflect or hope that that issue resolves itself, and I think we all know that they don't. They come back around. And to that point, I think as we're talking about Layla's, uh, specific evolution in leadership, although we've all been on the same 11-year journey, right, of building this organization, evolving who we are, needing to take different forms as the company has evolved. But it really goes back to one of the, I think, most proud moments, which is actually pretty recent. I want to be very careful about not getting into the details of the particular situation, but Layla, you recently had a very uncomfortable conversation. You were caught off guard by it, by a team member in your practice. And I think both you and a lot of leaders, but you historically, a lot of leaders, shoot, myself included, hand up, um, might have it might have been much easier to go, well, gosh, I don't know. You need to maybe go talk to somebody else about that. And instead, you attacked it head on, right? You said, look, I can have this awkward conversation or challenging conversation and navigate my way through it using the tools that I've learned in leadership over the last 4 or 5 years, or I can punt this and make it a much longer, drawn out, awkward conversation or moment that's going to probably take days, if not. And so, you came home, you talked about it, but I sensed a sense of pride in your own voice. Look, I did it. It was not what I wanted to do, but I did it, and because of that, I'm in a better position, the practice is in a better position, ultimately, this team member's in a better position. Um, so I'd just be interested in kind of hearing some of your thoughts on, how the evolution of of your own personal leadership gave you the confidence, I guess, to truly take on that conversation at the time.
Yeah, it was probably I told you that when I got home, it's probably the hardest conversation I've had in my career, because I usually did punt it. I say, "Oh, well, that's an HR issue," or, "Oh, that's this person." Um, it I would say that the leader that I became or am becoming and continue to learn is no longer scared to have conversations because I truly believe I'm doing the right thing, with the right intention, and so are they. And even though we're not aligned any longer and, this doesn't work for our practice any longer, I don't think that that person was doing anything in a malicious intent. And when I come from that perspective, it was hard, um, but it was honest, and I think she appreciated it, I appreciated it. It was really uncomfortable, and I had to sit through silence, and that is this, that is very, very
Does not come
challenging.
naturally to you.
It is silence is unnatural for me, for a high I in the disc, for those of you who watched the last one. But that's why I adjusted my style. So this leader version of me was, we're going to have some tough conversations, but if I come from a place of truly caring as you as a person, not an object, not a vehicle, not somebody in my way, and I see you as a person, I can talk to you in that way. And I'm not in the way that I'm expecting you to understand me. I come from every conversation now expecting to be misunderstood. And so it's very freeing to be more effective by asking a question or being silent and then letting that person talk. It took less than probably 15 minutes for the whole conversation. And in before version of Layla would have been like 2 hours, weeks of ruminating, not sleeping at night, looking over for validation and seeking guidance. But when you become a leader in a version of yourself, I own my conversations. I own the present moment today. And I promise that I have support. I promise that this person, I'm trying to be kind. It was probably the best and worst conversation of my life, but it that's what leadership looks like. My practice feels better. My She's probably in a better position because in that time frame when you both know it's wrong, but you don't wanna cut the cord because you're worried about all the things, the future. Right now, we don't have enough team members. It's really important to be present. Is this the right moment for the situation? And if the answer is yes, we will get through all the other stuff. We always have.
Matt, one of the things that, I think if I'm a doctor listening to this, I'm going, hey, that sounds great. How do I get started though? This seems insurmountable. I know I want to be that person. I know my practice needs that person. I think one of the things that we have done as an organization, and you two, along with Dr. Fouché, have certainly been the kind of tip of the spear on that. Is this concept? We go back. We talk about identity earlier in this, identifying, being really clear on your identity as a leader, as a practice. And we've implemented this process that our office leadership teams, our doctors and office managers, sit down together. And look, we have company values, we have a company mission as an organization, but we encourage them, hey, set your own practice values, your own practice mission. Layla, I've heard you call it your patient promise. And all of that is designed to give a very clear identity to the practice, the culture. But I also think it in turn gives those leaders confidence in knowing exactly who they are, delivering on that when situations come up that might be easier to take the passive route. We can go back and go, look, does this align with our values, our mission, our goals as a practice? And if not, then let's address it now. So um, I don't know. I'd just be interested, Matt, in you kind of talking about the evolution of that, how we think about that. I talked about that dual approach to leadership, where we're partnering doctors with office managers and giving them both that opportunity to be leaders and a constructive voice in the practice. But kind of how you think about maybe that exercise or those expectations that we set, and how they align with this idea of leadership in the practice.
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of fits together, right? So, this idea of having a very clear practice vision set by the office leadership team really grew out of everything we've been talking about. Layla's experience and our um, evolution as a company, and realizing that we can't provide the leadership right to a practice. We can provide a whole lot of things, right? And we do. But what we can provide to the doctor in this realm is partnership and development, not the leadership for them. And so by making that change, in our thinking, I think it opened up the path to us uh, developing doctors as people and as leaders. And then this kind of tool naturally grew out of that. So Dr. Fouché and Layla really were instrumental in helping to bring that into a package that makes it simple for any office leadership team, right? To put themselves in those ownership shoes, in that ownership mindset, and say, this is our practice, and what do we want this practice to be? I think it's really important to think about that. It's not just um, doing that for themselves, but it's getting that down on paper so it's clear, and then working with the team. And I say that very specifically. I'll come back to that. Um, to have everybody on the same page about what the practice's identity is, so that when you get in those situations, it's easy to point back to it. Everybody's bought into it. Everybody understands, what the practice vision is, what the patient promises are, and they know, right, then whether you're achieving that or not. Um, I said working with the team to put those down. I think making people a part of the process, regardless of their role in the practice, that gives them a reason to care, right, about those goals. It gives them a reason to be bought into them. And I think that's such a key part of the whole thing is of back up. I think that's such a key part of being a leader is recognizing that you've got to give people a reason to care before you can expect them to care. So if you're not thinking about this from giving everybody ownership and giving everybody a stake in the outcome, then you're behind the ball because just telling people what the goal is does nothing, right? You've got to first tell them why they should care, and then involve them in setting a goal and driving towards a goal. So a lot to say that I think that's the cornerstone of our leadership model for our practices, and that is how we drive a clear identity and a clear set of values and an ownership mindset, so that everybody can buy into that. So, David, you drive our clinical recruiting, and you're on the front lines, meeting lots of doctors and choosing a few to become part of Apex. What are the things you're looking for when you're deciding, is this somebody who we think can become a true leader and drive a practice?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, right? We've evolved a lot as an organization. I think we are more clear now than ever around how much our success depends on doctor leadership in each and every practice. And so for many ways or many reasons, we've really honed in on this as we're looking at doctors both from an affiliation perspective of, hey, you may have built a great practice up to this point, but do you still have the mindset that aligns with what our expectations are going forward? And for doctors coming into a practice, an existing practice, either through growth or backfilling for perhaps retirement, it's this I think this growth mindset, we talk a lot about it, but it has a lot of overlaps with leadership as well, right? We talk about personal, professional, financial growth. I love hearing doctors articulate that. Yeah, everybody wants to make more money, but I think I get most excited about doctors who can articulate their own personal responsibility in that kind of growth journey, that process, that pathway. When I hear a doctor just go, "Man, if I just had more patience, or if my team didn't turn over all the time, then I'd be successful." And I kind of step back and go, "Man, look, some of that I think speaks to who you are today. That doesn't mean a doctor can't change." We've talked a lot about Layla's leadership,
Yeah. I was gonna say,
transformation.
does that resonate with former Layla?
Yeah,
100%.
but you think about it as going, well, why is team turning over? Why do we struggle with building a patient base? And I think in many ways the overlap of doctors who struggle with that and doctors who struggle with leadership in general are that Venn diagram quickly becomes just a single circle, right? So I really get excited about doctors who um, voice and articulate personal accountability when things haven't gone well. What was their role in that? And can understand that, look, I've got to be better. I've got to continue growing as a person. I think we take that approach as an organization. And so there's a whole lot of overlap of we are most closely aligned with doctors who are looking to improve each and every day. It's easy to default to the clinical aspect of that. Well, I want to get better at that crown prep, or I really want to, get better at veneers or these large cosmetic cases. I get most excited because I know we can be really successful. We can be a great partner with a doctor who is looking to grow outside of the chair as well, in that leadership role. Because, look, we just finished up the month of March. We had a number of records set across the organization. We had individual doctors that hit, all time kind of high months. Specifically, doctors who have gone through our Catalyst program. We had practices that hit all time and not even close, but just blew some of their all time months out of the water. And when I look at those are doctors who have gone through our Catalyst program. And again, I know we talk a lot about this Catalyst program. There's very little clinical in that program. It's almost entirely personal and leadership development. I think it's no secret that those people who have found their leadership voice, who have um, catalyzed a team around them that is all marching in the same direction and understands the mission and the goal and the objectives of the practice, are achieving success. And so I think part of why, yes, Layla brought this to us, 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't that we didn't value it; it's that we weren't really there as an organization yet to truly support this process for our doctors. But I am so proud of what you guys have put in place. And again, I have to give a lot of credit to both Layla and Dr. Fouché. But what we've done as an organization to provide this opportunity for our doctors, because yes, we do well when our doctors do well. But I think more importantly, we're a model built around long-term doctor retention. Continuity of care is so important to our patient expectations. And when our doctors are doing really well, when we are giving them the tools to grow as a person, as a professional, and ultimately provide for their families, we see that long-term doctor retention. So long-winded answer to your question, but we always look for that mindset of, I am pivotal to the success of this practice, and I'm ready to step into that role, and I want that burden in many ways to be the leader of this practice going forward. So that's what I look for, and I think we have really consistently been successful with those doctors.
And I would just add, because I know that you talk to a lot of doctors, as we continue to grow as an organization, we're translating that leadership to everyone in the practice. We want that confidence to be from the administrative professional side to the clinical professional side, because if those people don't get career development, that's also something that basically affects the patient experience. And so as an organization, when we saw that this is doing so well and transformation for our doctors, and our doctors are like really happy, and happiness is a choice, but they chose to do these programs. They chose to do the personal and professional development. And I usually tell myself, I'm like, well, I was the case study. I was guinea pig number one. But the thing is it's been so freeing that we now can help our practices from all levels. So when you look for doctor leaders, we know it has to start there or it won't be a culture environment for those practices. But ultimately, we know that it takes a team to deliver that outstanding patient promise. And so, as an organization, we continue to grow and develop these programs for every professional in the practice.
All right. One more closing question for you, Layla. What is the thing that you are most excited about in the next 12 months?
Well, that's okay.
Vacations. No.
Actually, yes, because when you produce more, you can go on more vacations. So I would say the most exciting thing for me in the next 12 months is we have a new chief people's officer. We have the people to be able to organize and execute this from, like I said, the all practice level. I want this freeing, developing this confidence to be from every role, because the team having that mirror effect of everyone is a leader in your practice and you have that fulfillment professionally, then ultimately I believe you'll choose happiness, and be positive when you start translating that. So I'm really excited the next 12 months to be growing this program to our RDAs for the doctors who graduated from the Catalyst program, our hygiene launches that we're doing mini catalysts for hygiene launch. We're really capitalizing on that mindset and how to, like what you said, David, like for those people listening, how it's by learning what does that look like and what actions do I need to take to have the life that I want instead of expecting it to happen. So I'm excited to be able to bring this to the practice level, from all the roles.
Me too. Lots to do, but it's going to be great. All right. Well, thanks again, Layla, for joining us. It's always a pleasure. And I laughed earlier when you said, because I got really excited. It's like, I don't think I've ever seen you not excited. So it's always a joy to have you on and to work with you. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.